Welcome to this special video worship for Sunday, May 24th, 2020. This video was taken at our service on January 26th of this year and features music from our choir, along with the sermon, The Parable of the Second Samaritan. Next week, the Reverend Kalani Casella, minister at the UU Church of Las Cruces, joins us as pulpit guest. Be sure to join us for coffee and conversation afterwards at our virtual coffee hour on Zoom. It begins at 11 o'clock. Look for the link on our Facebook Fellowship Hall or in Saturday's email announcement. Bring who you are as you enter our church this morning. Bring your best self and your struggling self. Bring your mistakes and your triumphs. Bring your shortcomings and your recommitment to good. Bring yourself here and open your heart to beauty, to truth, to the door that is open to the presence of God. Here in this church, we are trying to walk together on the peaceable way, trying to hammer out division and hatred and all that separates one from another. We try, and we will fall short, but held in love, we try again. We come together this morning as a church to bow our heads in prayer, to raise our voices in song, to remember our promises, and vow to live by them once again. Let us open our minds and our hearts to one another as we gather for worship on this beautiful morning. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. Please be seated. Eternal and beloved, gracious source of all life and all love, we come together this morning grateful for this time out of time which we have set apart so that we might become more fully present to ourselves, to each other, and to that which we call holy. May our joys be celebrated together, our wounds be healed together, our hearts be open together. When we are broken open by life, let us hold fast to the refuge of truth and know others will hear it. Take our hand gently and say, "Come, let us find the way together." Guided by a love larger than life itself, may we find our way, our words, our hope, even in the dark. May we be a lamp for others, a beacon on the journey, tethered to this life, this world, this earth, connected to all humanity, offering comfort and compassion, working for peace and for justice. May we never stop listening for the next word. All this we pray in the names of those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Amen. If the young and the young at heart would like to join me here at the front of the sanctuary, I have a story this morning. I have a box with me this morning. It's very brown and worn and a little old, so it's probably got an old gift in it. An old story, I think. Probably one of the parables. Jesus told parables. They were old stories, older than us and your parents and your grandparents, stories of great wisdom that were also great gifts, which is why we keep them in these boxes. It's very brown. This is going to be a very brown story this morning and scratchy. It's a little rough. No greens, no blues, none of that in there at all. That is brown. And there's another earth tone. It's a little beige. I hope this isn't going to be a boring story. Maybe it goes there. Maybe it's just a crack in the brown. Maybe a crack in the earth. Maybe. It's a column. And another column. I think I know. End to end there. This is a road. This is a road between two places. A road going through very dry, brown, desert land. Not much there except for dirt and rocks. And people, because we need people for our story. This was the story Jesus told. There was a man who came to him to ask, "What are the most important things I should do in life?" And Jesus said, "You already know the answer to that. What are the greatest commandments you were taught as a child?" And the lawyer said, "Love my God with all my heart and all my soul and all my might and all my intelligence, and love my neighbor as myself." "Very good," said Jesus. "You know the answer." "Yes," said the lawyer, "but who is my neighbor?" "Ah," said Jesus, "let me tell you this story. There was a man traveling along the road through the dry desert from Jerusalem to Jericho. And as he traveled on his own, he fell amongst two thieves who came out from behind rocks, and they robbed him and they beat him and they left him on the side of the road with nothing, almost dead. Now it happened that a priest of the temple in Jerusalem walked by, a very holy man. And he saw the man hurt on the side of the road, but he was very, very busy, and he had to get on his day, and so he passed by the man. And also there was a Levite, a temple assistant, another very holy person who walked that same road and saw that same man, but he was off to the same conference that the priest was going to and had no time to stop, and so he passed on by. And then there was a Samaritan, an outcast in our culture, someone we think does not belong. And he too traveled along that road and saw the man hurting on the side. But the Samaritan stopped. He poured wine and oil into the man's wounds to clean them out, and he took off his cloak and covered him up and carried him all the way to an inn where he gave money to the innkeeper. Take care of this man and tend to his wounds. This money should be enough to take care of him, and if it's not, I will be back in 2 days to pay you more." And thus the man was saved and healed by the good conscience of a Samaritan. "Now tell me," said Jesus to the lawyer, "which one of these was a neighbor to the man?" "The Samaritan," said the lawyer. "You're right," said Jesus. "Go and learn, and go and do likewise." Now, that is our story this morning. We're going to head back to our intention table, where we're doing what today?
We are making things for others, but also eating chocolate and loving ourselves while we love others at the same time.
So Valentine's and chocolate, a little bit of self-care happening. I know some of you are going to want to get in on that as well if you want to come on over. But as we head back and as I pack up all my props here, let us sing together once again. One read to kick us off. This comes from Rebecca Parker. "Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the reaches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will, a moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, even yours. And while there is injustice, anesthetization, or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting. That which is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, the chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting. The young lawyer walked away from his encounter with Jesus that day feeling like his question had been answered, and on the other hand, not really answered directly, because that was how Jesus tended to do things in the parable. It felt like an answer, and at the same time, it felt like a challenge. Like he was being accused of something, and he got more and more bothered as he walked down the road back to his home. It started as a little itch in the back of his brain, and miles down the road, it had taken over into a full-sized burning in his skull. Something was not quite right. He thought for a moment, maybe I asked the wrong question. Maybe if I ask the right question, I can get a direct answer, or at the very least, a complimentary parable that might shine some light on what it is I'm missing in this situation here. And so he got home and he scarfed down a dinner and he got back out on the road to go back to where Jesus and his disciples were camping for the evening. He found them sitting around the fire, talking about their day, and Jesus saw the lawyer as he approached again. "You're back." "I am, Rabbi. I have a problem. See, I understand what you were trying to say in the story, to love the Samaritan as I love myself. And I've known several Samaritans. I've never felt much love for them because, well, uncleanliness and outcastedness and all of that. And so that feels a little weird. And at the same time, I love in my life, I love my family and I take good care of them. And I like my neighbors, well, most of them, and I try to do right, or at least not get in their way, but I'm not sensing that I've really felt this love you're describing, and I start to wonder about myself then, Rabbi. If I'm not loving my neighbors, am I loving myself? How, Rabbi, do I love myself? I don't suppose you got another Samaritan story that you can share with me that might help get me an answer to all of this? And Jesus sighed and shook his head. He said, "I don't do these on the spot, kid. These are well-crafted stories that are insightful. I can't just pull one out of a bag for you. And no, I don't have a second Samaritan here. But let's see if we can help find an answer to your question." Now, I'm going to tell a little story on myself. I am the lawyer in this version of the story here. I have been going back to the parable of the Good Samaritan time and time again because it's a good one and it's a great lesson explicating how we love our neighbors as ourselves. But knowing what I know about myself, I struggle with the love myself part of the equation frequently. And I found myself a few months ago wishing that there had been another parable in that story so we could get both sides of the equation. Why is there no parable of the other Samaritan to teach me how to love myself so I know how to love my neighbor? What is this loving myself that is being talked about in that greatest commandment? First off, it is not an egotism. Let me just be upfront about that. That will not be the answer to the question this morning. The love that gets used both in the New Testament and in the Old is that broad, wide, agape love that the Greeks love to use that word for, that all-encompassing love, that full-hearted, full-bodied love that we are supposed to feel. And there is the start of the answer. But why did Jesus not explicate what it meant to love yourself in that equation? Well, first up, in that time, people had a completely different sense of what self meant. I mean, the sense of myself as I, an individual who stands somehow separately and distinct from everyone else, wasn't quite as fully formed in that time in Judea. There was a sense of an individual, but it was wrapped up in that sense of community and the sense of the neighborhood. I was part of something slightly larger than myself, if not all-encompassingly larger than myself. It was a tribal sense of self, a familial sense of self. And people understood that deep down in their hearts, so Jesus didn't need to shine a light on what that meant. What he was trying to say in that parable to folks was, could we be a little less parochial about the concept of neighbor? Here, let me pull someone we don't feel neighborly about and draw them into the equation and start to just blow your mind a little bit with the message I'm trying to give here. That communal sense of self intertwined with community, meant that we wanted for the tribe, we wanted for the neighborhood what we wanted for ourselves. That was that sense of self-love he was trying to get across. But then modernity happened, and we got this very egotistical, individual sense of the self along with it, this sense of the I, the island of myself. I became more isolated, though no less connected to the neighborhood around me. And with that isolated self, with that disconnected sense of self, there comes self-doubt and the criticism of self. And if you listen to the voice of that inner critic enough, probably a little bit of self-loathing too. This is the stuff that I struggle with, and the reason I'm going looking for this parable of the second Samaritan in the first place. My self-critic voice is a jerk. It's a huge struggle to not listen to that voice, and if I do let myself fall down that well, I do tend to start hating myself in everything I do. My imposter syndrome starts to get its own imposter syndrome. I struggle. And in that sense, I still want better for others outside of myself. Now I'm wanting more for others than I can allow for myself, and I start to wonder, am I starting to fail in this love myself and my neighbors equation somehow? The lesson of Jesus' time, if we go back to that intertwined sense of self, is that love of self and love of others are not an if-then equation. If I love myself, then I can love others. But also, if I can love others, I can love myself. It is a feedback loop. It is inextricably intertwined, the capacity to love self and others. Unlike what I said to you 2 weeks ago, you do not need to be able to love yourself in order to love others first. Sometimes it sparks the other way because it is all circular and connected the way that it is. Sometimes the capacity to love others sparks the capacity within us to love self. It is all tied together. But what lights that spark one way or another? What is it that charges the capacitors? What gives us the unlimited capacity to love in one direction or another that might loop back either into love for self or love for neighbors? Jesus looked at the lawyer for a little bit and thought, and said, I don't have a second Samaritan. Let me give you another story here. I had a friend many years back, another rabbi by the name of Hillel, and he was approached by some of our Roman occupiers one day who challenged him and said, your Jewish law is immense and huge. Could you maybe stand on one leg and summarize it all for us? And so Hillel, being a clever man, stood on one leg, and the lawyer said, I know, every first-year student gets the story. He stands on one leg, and he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's the exact answer I just gave you this morning when we talked, Jesus. And Jesus said, you already gave me the answer. But that doesn't tell me how to love myself, said the lawyer. He said, forget the second part for a minute. What's the first thing you said in the answer? What's the first great commandment? And the lawyer said, the law says you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Aha, said Jesus. Think about that for a minute. Let's think about that for a minute. That first great commandment, the one we tend to gloss over when we go back to the Samaritan story over and over again. We love loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. But that first commandment that the lawyer parrots back to Jesus, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might, or as Eugene Peterson, the great Presbyterian biblical scholar, translated in his Bible paraphrase, all your passion, all your prayer, and all your muscle. I love that version of it. We might struggle a bit with that concept this morning. Some of us are sitting here perfectly comfortable with the concept of God and loving our God, and some of us may not. So I'm going to ask us for a moment to turn on our Unitarian Universalist translation algorithms so we can all get on the same page for the rest of this sermon this morning. It's been several years since I think I've taken you through this little logistical loop-de-loop that I do, but it goes like this. Rabbi Michael Lerner, another great modern rabbi, says that the name for God in the Hebrew Scriptures, Yahweh, Yod, He, Vav, He, the 4 letters, is actually a very complex tense of the verb to be. That which is becoming that which shall be. An active verb in a process of constant creation. That which is becoming that which shall be, which I take on to mean all that is and shall be, all that is, all that was, all that shall be, everything. Everything in history and time and everything that exists within it, or as we like to talk about here, the interconnected web. Or, as I like to mythologize, the great heart at the center of everything. Love all that is with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. The great mystery of the self I am trying to figure out how to love, is that here I stand, unique and for one time only, connected to everything that came before me, fed and made by everything that came before me, feeding and making everything that will come after me, and rooted and connected inextricably with everything that is right now, all that is, or as we'll call it this morning, the neighborhood, the one without bounds. I have been given much, and I have much to give in this equation. I am at once gifted and a gift to the world, and I can choose to bless or curse the world with my gifts. As Rebecca Parker tells us, I'm at once an individual and integral to the neighborhood. And so those two commandments that we hear in the parables are as interrelated as the neighborhood is itself. To love God, to love all that is to love the neighborhood, is to love the self with all its gifts and with everything it has been gifted with. And once we can accept that, once we can embrace that, and I will admit that is a struggle, but once we can see ourselves both individual and integral, the choice to love becomes no choice at all, really, because we're either loving ourselves into part of it, or we are closing ourselves off and becoming a dead node in the matrix of all that is. So then all that is left is the lawyer's real question: how shall I love? And the answer is fully. All your heart, all your soul, all your might. Do a little linguistic scholarship here for a moment. The heart in the Hebrew scripture, and that law they are quoting comes from the book of Deuteronomy, so it's originally in the Hebrew. That heart is understood as the inner self. That love must start from within us, from the spirit of life that has been instilled in us, the thing that makes us both unique and at the same time part of the larger. All of our passions, all of our thoughts, all of our dreamings, all of our yearnings, that inner life is where the fullness of that love begins. But it doesn't stop at the heart. The law then says you will love with all your soul. In the Greek, in the New Testament, that is the psyche, which was understood as the wholeness of your being, not just your inner life, but your outer life as well, everything that makes you you. How your thoughts turn into actions, how your ideas are spoken into words, everything that comes out of you, every product of your being is how you shall love all that is. And finally, you will love with all your might. This is a fun word. It gets translated in English Bibles a lot as strength, but that misses the mark completely. In the Greek scriptures of the New Testament, that word is translated as power. Yeah, fine, sure. Yeah, it just kind of reinforces that bodily sense of the wholeness we're trying to talk about. But if we go back to the Aramaic that Jesus was speaking, that word would have been translated as wealth. That's a little troubling. Sounds a little mercenary maybe, but no, you shall love with every resource you have at your disposal, whatever that may be. And both of those are all well and good, but don't seem quite enough until we go back to the Hebrew and the Deuteronomy where that law is first written. And the word for might is not a verb that gets used a lot in the Hebrew scriptures. It actually only shows up twice in the entirety of the Hebrew Bible. Normally when that word shows up, the word they use for might, which is me'od, it's an adverb. and it's the adverb we call very. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your veriness. Go the extra mile. If they ask for your shirt, give them your coat as well. Double down on everything you are. That is how you are to love. In Deuteronomy and repeated again in the Gospel of Matthew, it's a progression of degree. Love God with yourself. Love God with your whole self. Love God with the very veriness to the extreme of yourself. Am I making my point clear, says the law, waving all the flags for you to see. Love all that is with everything that is within you. Love all that is with everything that is within you and without you. Love everything with the very veriness of who you are. How we are called to love in that agape-ness and that wholeness of love is to be ourselves to the fullest, to give the fullest of everything we have been given, heart and soul and might and mind, and in our ways of loving and our ways of being in the fullness of everything that we feel with every gift we have been given, in every gift that we are. How shall I love myself? Not with an egotism, but by choosing to bless the world, by choosing to be a participant and a partner in the ongoing story of the creation of the great heart at the center of all things. Because the neighborhood that we call the web is not a static place. The lines of connection do not just sit there. It is a matrix of our energies passing back and forth. It requires of us to give back what has been given to us from all that came before to all that will come after us. Because if we can't give of ourselves, if we cannot love all that is in our very veriness, then the web is just a cobweb gathering dust, sitting in a corner. Not the thing that crackles with the energy full of the spirit of life that we are participating in. Beating like a great heart. The lawyer walked home that night, not sure if his question had been answered fully. He felt like perhaps he had been challenged, and he was. And so are we. He did not get the parable he was hoping for, and I have not found the one I was hoping to look for. But perhaps he found something better. And perhaps we all did too. Love all that is, from within, from without, to the very depths of our veriness. May it be so. Once again, our offering recipients for the month of May are the Navajo Nation COVID-19 Relief Fund and the Pueblo Nations Relief Fund. The web addresses for both of those organizations are here on your screen and in the service notes below. I invite you to visit their websites, learn more about how they are using your funds, and make a direct donation to either or both of these organizations. Please give as generously as you can, and may what you give bring you joy and into deeper relationship with this community. May life bless us and keep us. The light of life shine upon us and out from within us and be gracious to us and bring us peace. For this is the day. This is the one wild and precious life we are given. So let us all find a way to rejoice and be glad in it. Go in peace.